Do you think you'll regret it if you never had kids?
No. I am not sure if I want this environment to my kids.
The idea of being pregnant just does not appeal to me.
If someone else is paying for the kids.
Not to mention easy access to birth control.
People are dying.
My bloodline ends with me.
America has declining birth rates. Why do you think this is happening? Because today there's two schools of thought.
The number of humans on Earth needs to go down, or it will be our downfall.
The planet cannot support more people.
Can our planet even sustain nearly 8 billion now and 10 billion by 2050?
How are we going to feed everybody, get water to everybody, provide power to everybody? How are we going to do this?
Or are we focusing on the wrong problem?
This is the most commonly misunderstood situation. What we face is population collapse.
The size of family shrinks precipitous, like below replacement. There's going to be a terrible shortage of young people.
And so are we headed towards decline and even worse, extinction? So I'm out here today and the question I'm asking is, do you want kids?
I have kids, but if I didn't have a kid, I'd still want a kid. The only way we're gonna survive is to embrace being human. Just because we can do something, it doesn't mean we should.
I already have kids.
Have you always wanted kids when you were growing up?
Yes.
Would you want your kids to have kids?
If it's right for them.
By the time I'm 35, I'll be old enough to kind of start being more mature at that point.
Do you know how many kids you want?
We'll do one adopted, one natural kid, natural birth. It's the first one I want to adopt to skip the first 5
Like a
years.
little trial run?
Yeah, trial run. Exactly.
Return it if you don't like it?
100%.
Oh, I don't know. That's a lot of money that I wouldn't be spending on myself.
I don't think I'm equipped to raise a child through all the, that things I can hardly deal with myself.
I like to go out a lot. I can only take care of one person.
I'm a musician, and so it's really hard for me to even think about caring for others at this time.
Do you eventually want to have kids at some age?
Maybe if someone else is paying for the kids.
But it's your kid.
I need to do some healing before I impart any of those things I've gone through on another little human. It's not that I don't want kids. I'm a 39-year-old woman, and at this point in my life, there's just still work I need to do, and it's just not really maybe in my cards.
Do you feel more free not having kids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can travel whenever I want. I can spend my money all on me.
In my early 20s, I wanted kids really badly, but that was before I started having so much fun.
What's like a typical weekend look like for you?
Like go to a music festival or like an EDM or house show.
Yeah, them kids, right? Do you want kids?
I think it's very selfish. Looking at the world and how it is right now, global warming and all that kind of stuff. I am not sure if I want this environment to my kids.
The climate, like climate change and everything, that has obviously gotten worse over our generation. So the problems we're facing nowadays aren't really the same that people were facing decades ago.
Because for the first time in history, people are questioning if it's even morally okay to have children.
Climate change is a big factor in why she's not having children.
We're not sure that we're going to have kids because we don't want to bring our kids into a world like this.
It is not okay to have children.
The lives of children are going to be very difficult.
And it's impacting everyone. The number of babies being born is inching closer and closer to 2.1 per woman, which is the replacement number that prevents the population from shrinking.
For the first time ever, there are more women without children at 30 than there are women with children.
So in short, people ain't having sex. And with some countries already facing the consequences, we must question the social implications of an increasingly isolated society. But is this all legit or just fear-mongering? Is the world even heading towards collapse or overpopulation, or both at the same time? And a matter of fact, do I even see myself starting a family? Like, I deadass still live out of a fucking suitcase. I guess we gon' see. And starting with America. America has declining birth rates. Why do you think this is happening?
In our parents' generation, most people got married younger, with women being caretaker, like cooking, watching your children, like being a stay-at-home mom, like that was your job. Nowadays, it's like women like to work. To be a stay-at-home mom, like you have to have money.
Honestly, everything was cheaper back then. You could get a house for much cheaper. Everything was just more affordable. But also, I feel like a lot of people in this generation are trying to be successful on their own and creating these startups, which you really don't have time to take care of a baby.
The declining of birth rates is people planning more their lives, their future, and their family life.
Why do you think this is happening to our country?
People are dying. I don't know. I went to dark places, I'm sorry. But I mean, I think people are maybe more career focused. Like, people are getting kids when they're older.
People are realizing, I have a future to have before I even have a family. I'm saving till I actually finish my goal, and then I'll have kids after that. Be able to be financially stable enough to where my family is not suffering.
It's interesting, too, because it's not just America, but a lot of developed nations. Do you think then this is a sign of societal decline?
Absolutely, and we should be very alarmed.
Definitely, and good for us. I think some destruction is necessary for things to grow into new places.
There's a lot of people who just want to go out and have fun, experience their lives. Parents will say, hey, don't have kids at my age. Go out and have fun.
In order to provide a good life to your kids, it's expensive nowadays.
Do you think in America we're prioritizing more about getting the bag rather than building a strong family unit?
For some people, you got to get the bag first to build a strong family unit. For what some people want for their family,
you got to be making money to have that.
It seems like the cost of having kids is a big factor. But hasn't this always been the case even during our parents' generation? Why do you think this is happening where my generation, like Gen Z and millennials, are having kids a lot later in life?
People are preferring to live their own lives, some selfish lives, with no kids, with no problems, with more money to spend with themselves.
I think that you're exposed to a lot more of what's going on.
Having kids means taking away from my freedom. What would you say to that as someone who's been a mother?
Oh, it definitely takes away from your freedom.
So did you ever regret it during that process?
No, I found it difficult at times. And sometimes, you know, you would daydream and like wonder like, ooh, what would life be like? But then there's like your kid, man. Like I have massive love for my girls.
So for them, it's like being in person, whereas like us, like social media, like Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, we can connect more easily.
Do you think we're more connected though?
I think that maybe just like access to technology has just shown us like how much more there is out there.
And look, it seems paradoxical, but is this infinite access to potential options and technology the direct contributor to our falling birth rates?
When you're single, everyone's always like, hey, get on a dating app.
What's my #1 opening line on Tinder?
With a click of a button, dating apps presents you a pool of potential partners with an algorithm built to keep you addicted to the promise of finding the one.
I just feel like that she's the one, you know what I'm saying? I FaceTime her a lot. Her personality really matched who I am.
Even with the seemingly equal and never before seen opportunity to find love while taking a shit, the outcomes have been far from equal. What they found with the Tinder economy is that the bottom 80% of men in terms of attractiveness are competing for the bottom 22% of women, and the top 78% of women are competing for the top 20% of men. And so for those at the top with options, there's a paradox of choice in dating where people are always searching to avoid committing to one person in fear of losing out on someone even better out there. Whereas for most men, it's a different reality.
Over the last decade, the number of men reporting no sex in the last year has tripled.
Compared to past generations who were getting jobs, having sex, getting married, and then having kids earlier, almost 1/3 of men under 30 today haven't had sex in the last year or haven't had sex at all. And with the rise of AI, not only is there genuine fear that automation will start replacing people's jobs, from truck drivers to even lawyers, it may even start replacing human companionship.
The whole point of a robot is that you can have a relationship with it.
I stopped seeing her as an it, and more as not a person, of course, but something more.
And so are we raising a generation of men who are risk averse and not developing the competencies required for adult responsibilities like starting a family?
I saw you and I thought you were, and I was wondering if I could get your... No, forget it, yeah.
Because are we at a point where adolescence is becoming an extension of childhood rather than the beginning of adulthood? Shut up, bro. Come on, I'm grown. And so it's important to consider that for every action, there's always an equal and opposite reaction. And so how is all this impacting women and ultimately the future of our population? Do you think people look down on being a mom today? The reason why I asked this is because you even prefaced this saying that you want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like that's like a bad thing.
To be a stay-at-home mom, like you have to have money. Unless your one partner is able to pull for the both of you and your family, like you cannot be a stay-at-home mom.
I think a lot of people like glamorize motherhood, but then I think a lot of people have started dissing people who are mothers or who embrace motherhood. I don't know, I've been seeing like a lot of TikToks of people who once they have children, it causes like stress in the marriage.
I don't know if you are on TikTok, but there's a whole thing with like the girl with like the list of like reasons why you should not have kids.
And this TikTok list by Unique Thoughts is a compilation of over 350 reasons to never have a child. She compiles TikToks from various accounts and adds them to her list of reasons ranging from baby parasite to uterine trauma. And based on its engagements, the videos have become pretty damn popular. But it does make you think, does it reflect the popular trend nowadays to bash pregnancies and to encourage women to reject motherhood?
I've also seen like a lot of people in like the public space that choose to not have kids, so it's kind of like I have a role model of women who don't want the same outcome of their life that has just been kind of just like a generational thing.
We learn a lot of things nowadays based off like social media, what people will decide to share.
Having children isn't always like the best option for everyone, and I think people are just starting to realize that.
And in developed countries with greater access to education and birth control, there tend to be lower fertility and birth rates. And along with it, a shift where women now have the opportunity to prioritize their own careers and goals, unlike in underdeveloped countries where family and children are the traditional focus. And with that, it made me consider another perspective. Do you feel like the societal pressure to have kids is unfair?
I live in the LA bubble where a lot of people are doing similar things to what I'm doing. They're focusing on their career.
I'm curious, like in your immediate circle, how many of them have kids?
Oh, none.
Luckily, like all my family are just like, they know I'm going for my goals and they're not pressuring me, which is great. But I know some people get pressured.
I feel like women are kind of seen as like, that's your job, that's your responsibility. But I think a lot of times people forget that like our responsibility is just to kind of enjoy the life that we're living.
For generations, adult femininity was most correlated with having children, and not having any was putting your individual needs above the country's. Even the Pope recently criticized couples that were having pets over children in response to the declining global birth rates.
E tante coppie non hanno dei figli perché non vogliono, ma hanno due cani, due gatti, si toglie umanità.
And so it's evident that both men and women now have different realities, priorities, and access. But is this what's contributing towards population collapse in many countries like America? Because for some countries, is it already too late?
Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has warned that the declining birth rate is putting the future of the country at risk.
Japan has been facing low birth rates and an aging population for several decades now, where in the past year, the number of deaths in the country has reached twice the number of births.
People have many competing priorities to weigh children against.
The Prime Minister has even issued a warning that Japan is on the brink of not being able to maintain social functions, and that the country cannot wait any longer to solve problems. And it's not just Japan.
South Korea is facing a population crisis.
Italy's decreasing population is the most pressing issue that needs to be addressed.
Many developed countries are even providing financial incentives for couples to have more children. It's to a point where even China, the world's most populated country, is now experiencing population decline caused by the impact of their one-child policy that was implemented to control overpopulation.
China did have a one-child policy, but about 10 years ago they changed it to a two-child policy. Then a few years ago they changed it to a three-child policy. China's birth rate right now is 40% below replacement.
And with the economic impact that could result if low birth rates continue in these large economies, it becomes apparent why even traditionally isolationist countries like Japan are considering opening up their borders. And so I wanted to ask a Brazilian immigrant in America about immigration. People point to immigration as a solution when societies are having less kids. But do you think that also leads to further societal issues? Do you think that it brings more of a benefit or more of a detriment?
I think it brings both. Once they bring a lot of people from all over the world, they will need to reorganize themselves and respect their own laws and their own culture. But in a certain point, I do believe that immigration could be the problem to solve, and also family planning. It's crazy still that you see a family that is poor having 5 kids.
And so then, what's happening in these less developed countries? Underdeveloped countries like Angola and Chad have birth rates as high as 8 per woman in younger populations. But as a country gets richer, birth rates decline. Nigeria is a prime example. As their economy grew to the largest in Africa, its birth rates decreased. Not only does a growing economy change access to education and family planning, but also affords opportunities to shift attitudes towards marriage and family. And so there's a tricky balance between having enough money to have kids and a general decline in desire to have kids as wealth increases. What does this tell us about society and what we truly value? Because when we look at these trends, what does it say about our priorities? Often, it's only in hindsight when we can realize what we truly value. Do you think you'll regret it if you never had kids?
I think a lot of times people have more feelings of like, I wish I would have waited. Maybe I would have like thought things through more before having children versus people who don't have them. I feel like they less of the time like regret not having.
No, because honestly, in the past I've thought about it. Like, and I also have a brother talking to him about stuff, and we're just like, I think that it'd be okay if we did not. You know what I mean? I feel like the world will be okay.
Yeah, I think it's something that naturally I'd want if I had more time. If I could still have kids at like 60, 70, which maybe you might. I mean, there's probably women out there. In general, I'm just thinking I'm probably gonna time out.
Would you be really sad if you didn't have kids?
Yes, I feel like I would. As like a nanny, I feel like I've been around them for so long, so if I didn't have them, I would be kind of a little bit upset.
Kind of just hoping that I won't regret it, but I could also see how maybe when I become older, like not having someone that's forced to take care of me.
Right. I mean, because we changed a lot, right? I'm guessing you, when you started college, is a lot different than you are who you are today, right?
Totally, yes.
Because I've also seen how my desire for wanting kids have changed as I've entered my mid-20s. Because for a long time, I didn't want kids. And call it getting older, but the biggest shift was how I started to view relationships. The Harvard study of adult development is the longest running study on happiness. And since 1938, it has tracked 268 initial participants and even their children's lives and well-being to see what made people happy. And what the study consistently found was that it wasn't money or status or the shiny car, but strong relationships with family, friends, and romantic partners that was crucial not only for happiness, but for health and even resiliency.
Good relationships keep us happier and healthier.
So it made me think, does Western society's emphasis on individualism and personal achievement actually make us happier? Or is the neglect of the family unit and values and disregard for others exactly what's making our lives more challenging? Do you think like having kids is a key to having like a fulfilled life?
Well, having kids is very, very good. I love my kids. I love having kids. The first baby, when I was 18 years old, was a very difficult parenthood. You can imagine how a kid going to college experienced a life of paternity. And so we went through.
Like for me, I think it's key to happiness. Like I said, they're gonna be a little fun, you know? They're gonna be annoying, of course, they're kids. I know I was annoying.
I was annoying too.
I don't think it's for everyone. It's a hard job, and so for some people, yes. But for some people, absolutely not.
Do you regret not having more kids?
No, had a perfect 2 girls, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what we often fail to see is that the solution is in the nuance. Just like the example of overpopulation versus the risk of collapse, it's only when we finally recognize the negative consequences of prioritizing one side over the other is when we can finally understand that 2 opposing things can coexist. And just like how I used to think that having a family would detract from my lifelong goals like building a media company, I now realize that it can actually be my biggest motivator to achieve that and even more. And it's when we decide to fearlessly navigate through the nuances of life to find what truly matters to us. That's what I call exploring the unfamiliar. And with that, thanks for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content where I turn street interviews into investigative journalism. And if YouTube gets it right, you'll like this video too.